We post, we share, we argue online. It's just what we do every single day. But have you ever stopped to think about who decides where the line is? Who draws that line between free speech and something that's just not okay? In this huge, borderless world of the internet, who's actually in charge of the rules? That's what we're going to unpack. This quote, well, it gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? I think most of us believe in free speech, but we also feel like there have to be some limits, to prevent things like harassment or misinformation or calls for violence. The real fight, the one that shapes our entire online experience, is about where exactly that limit lies. To really get a handle on today's debates, we've got to go back to the beginning, back to the original promise of the internet. Man, the early internet felt like this utopia for expression, right? It was going to be a global village where every single voice could be heard, a truly democratizing force. But it really didn't take long for that utopian dream to collide with a much older and way messier human reality. And that collision, well, it brings us right to the core conflict. It's this constant push and pull that's at the center of every single content moderation debate out there. So on one side of the scale, you have this fundamental right to express yourself. But on the other, you've got the very real need to protect people from harm. And finding that perfect balance, it's incredibly difficult. I mean, why? Because you have billions of people from all these different cultures all talking at once. What one person thinks is just acceptable speech, another might see as deeply, deeply harmful. Every platform, every government is constantly trying, and let's be honest, often struggling, to get this right. And here's the thing. We can't treat speech like it's in its own little bubble. It's actually the root system for pretty much every other major online challenge. Think about it for a second. Debates over privacy, intellectual property, security, misinformation. They all eventually boil down to one thing: controlling what we can say, what we can share, and what we can see online. So this balancing act is clearly tough. How have societies traditionally even tried to solve it? Well, they do what societies do. They create laws. Limits on speech, they definitely didn't start with the internet. Every society has them. You can't just legally destroy someone's reputation with lies. We call that libel. You can't incite hatred. The point is, the idea of limiting certain types of harmful speech is an old one, and it's deeply embedded in our legal systems. Now, here's a limit on speech you might not immediately think of: property. How on earth can property rights limit what you say? Well, it happens through something you probably see every single day: intellectual property. Okay, take trademarks. A trademark is basically a form of expression. It could be a word, a phrase, a symbol that is legally owned by a person or a company. And that ownership gives them the exclusive rights to use it. This is a perfect example. A quick trademark search shows that Star Wars is legally protected. So what does that mean for you? It means you can't just go print it on a t-shirt and start selling it. Disney owns that specific expression, and their property rights directly limit what you're allowed to say and create, at least commercially. Okay, let's switch gears and narrow our focus to a very specific, real-world case. Let's look at how one country's laws handle recorded speech when it ends up in a courtroom. First, we've got to get a key term out of the way: admissible evidence. It's pretty simple, really. It's just any information that a court will actually allow to be presented during a trial. Not everything makes the cut. And for recorded speech, the rules can be super strict. So let's look at the law in the Philippines. For recording to be used in court, it has to clear 4 hurdles. First, and this one's a big one, everyone in the conversation must have consented to being recorded. Then, of course, it has to be relevant to the case. Third, you have to prove it's authentic and hasn't been tampered with. And finally, it has to be clear enough for people to actually understand. But wait a minute, what about that consent rule? It sounds pretty absolute. Are there ever any exceptions to it? Yes, there are. The law recognizes that sometimes other things are just more important. If a recording captures a crime as it's actually happening, or if presenting it serves some kind of significant public interest, a court might decide that the lack of consent gets overridden. It's another perfect example of that balancing act in action. And you should know, these rules have some serious teeth. The law, it's called Republic Act 4200, comes with severe penalties. We're talking prison time and heavy fines for unlawful recordings. This really shows you just how seriously the legal system treats the rules around this very specific form of speech.
Okay, so we just did a deep dive into a specific national law. Let's zoom back out now and look at the global challenge one more time.
Because ultimately, we end up right back where we started. It doesn't matter if we're talking about social media platforms, national laws, or even international agreements, the fundamental challenge is exactly the same: trying to find that workable balance between the ideal of total freedom and the very practical needs of a safe, functioning society. And that leaves us with the final and most critical question. The internet doesn't have borders, but our laws certainly do. So as more and more of our lives and our speech move online, who should be in charge? Should it be governments, the tech companies themselves, some kind of combination of the two? There is no easy answer here, and it's a conversation that, whether we know it or not, we're all a part of.